Happy video day, guys. It's Christina and Brooke here, and today we are doing a Makeup Your Mind. So I know it's been a minute, but I did tell you guys that this year may be a strange year for Makeup Your Mind because I figured there wouldn't be as many exciting eyeshadow palette releases, at least not in the beginning of the year. So I've been waiting for something that really calls my attention, and finally something did. So today's video, we're going to be talking about the new Huda Beauty Obsessions palettes. So she's releasing 3 new palettes. One is called the Tortoise, the other one's called Caramel, and finally Toffee. So those are the 3 palettes that are going to be released, and they're going to be released on March 30th. They're going to be $29 US each, just like her typical mini shadow palettes. And you know what, guys? I was pretty excited. I think you guys know, I've mentioned this before, I really love Huda Beauty's mini obsessions. I just think that they're really nicely curated. I really like the formula. I honestly always think that they're really, really nice. So what we're doing today is I'm looking through my collection to find these color stories because I need to decide which one of these I want to pick up. So the way I do that is I find the color stories in my collection to see which one makes the most sense for me, which one I feel like I would use the most, which one I like the most. Because sometimes when you see the pretty little promo pictures, you end up saying, I want that one. And then it ends up being that the reason you wanted it was just because it was the prettiest one, but it might not be colors you use very often. So I really like to find the color stories first, decide which ones are the ones I'm going to get the most use out of, and also the ones that I feel like the colors make a lot of sense. So that's what we're going to do. We're doing all 3 of them in this video, so we've got a lot to go over. Grab a snack, and I also have my little puppy here in the room with me. She's sleeping right now, but that's not a problem because with the magic of cinematography, I'm going to show you her right now, but it'll actually be when she woke up at the end of this video. She is Miss America. Here is my little puppy. So here she is, guys. This is Copper. So this is my new puppy. So she's a Brittany and she's adorable. She's actually still a little bit tired. She just woke up right now, but it's actually time for lunch. Say hi, Copper. Say hi. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you've probably already seen her a couple times. She's been making a lot of debuts over there. So anyways, let's go ahead and let's get into this Makeup Your Mind. Let's start it right now. Okay, so I've got everything sitting in front of me. We've got a lot to go over. Have you subscribed? Please hit the subscribe button and join the family. I would love to see you again, and if you like these type of videos, I do them all the time, as long as there's good palettes. Now, I want to tell you guys first and foremost, these color stories are not anything we haven't seen before. If anything, I feel like these are the most similar to current palettes that I have seen from Huda Beauty, but that's not necessarily like something that turns me off because I feel like her curation of colors are usually so good that sometimes they're worth getting in a mini. And I will also note to you guys that there is some palettes that I think dominate. Like basically a lot of the colors are in certain palettes. So I will say that if you have those palettes, you may want to think twice or just decide if you want a mini version of it. But let's start off with the first one. The first one is the Tortoise. So this one actually calls my attention because I really like these light, airy looks. I love browns. Like browns to me are just the easiest to use. And I don't know, I resonate with this palette. This palette, I really, really like it. So let me first show you guys the palettes that I used. So the first palette that I used, a majority of the colors are coming from the Tarte Juicy palette. This one right here. So if you guys picked up this new Tarte Juicy palette, there's a lot of shades that are very similar to this one in her new palette. There was 3 shades that I couldn't find in the Tarte palette, only 3. And those 2 I actually got from the Mauve Obsessions and I got from the Smoky Obsessions. So that's how I was able to make this first palette. So now let's run down the colors. I'll tell you guys what I'm thinking of the color story. So let's start off with the very first color. So the first color was one that when I first started, I said, wow, I might not actually have this. Wow, this is so different. So I ended up having to jump into the Mauve Obsessions from Huda Beauty, and I jumped into this middle color right here. This is the closest color that I could find that looks like this palette. I don't think that this one's going to be identical, but I do think it's going to have very similar tones to it. So it's going to be something, oh my gosh, I have black everywhere because my Smoky Obsessions is broken. And it dropped black all over my table. So if I have black in this whole video, I'm so sorry. I don't think it's identical, but I do think it's going to have a very close undertone. And I'm gonna say I really like that color. It shows up really nice on my skin tone. It's one of those that I can use as a base tone. I can also use it all over the lid, and I think it looks really pretty. So I'm happy with the first one. I really honestly love that color. So the next one, I actually jumped into the Tartelette palette, and I jumped into this color called Dusk right here, and it's almost like a lighter brown, but it has a little bit of like a bronzy tint to it. I really like this color. I actually even think that the new Huda Beauty one might even be a little richer than the one that's inside of the new Tarte palette. I also feel like Huda's formula is just a little bit more pronounced than the Tarte Juicy palette. So all of these colors that I'm showing you, even though I feel like I found the colors in the Tarte palette, I do think Huda's formula is probably going to be a lot richer and more pigmented off the get-go. So for the next one, I had a hard time finding this in the Juicy palette because it's a little bit more of a light palette. Actually, these are probably some of the colors that I wish they would have included in the Juicy palette. So the next one, I grabbed this color right here in the center. I'm trying not to move this palette because this is the culprit with the broken black. So it's this color right here in the center. Ooh, this is such a nice, rich, beautiful brown. And it has a really pretty metallic sheen to it. I really like it. I honestly think it might be really similar to that color. So far guys, this color story, yes, it's brown, it's neutral, but let me tell you, this is a very easy to use color story right now. I like the difference in tones. If you guys can see just from what I found here, even though I think this one's gonna be a little deeper, what I found right here, you can already see a nice difference in tones where I think that you can create some really pretty lids. So for the next one, Juicy palette, and I jumped into the color Sheen right here, which is this beautiful goldy tone. Oh, I really like this one too. So it looks like this. Now, it has a little bit more orange than I think the one that's going to be in the Huda Beauty palette. The Huda Beauty one I think might go a little bit more gold, but you can also put a little bit of Dawn on top. So Dawn is the color that's a little bit more gold, and if you kind of like just pack it on top of this color, you do start to get something that's a little bit more gold. But I'm really liking this color story so far. Like, this is kind of like me in a palette for like everyday use. I really like that. So what I did for this next color is I had to mix two colors out of the Tarte palette. I think it looks very close to Happiness, but it has a little bit more of a peach shift to it. So I did, on top of Happiness, add a little bit of the color Inspiring. So these two together. So that is what I think it's going to look like. At least I can get an idea of the color. And in all honesty, I was looking through my collection for something similar to that, and unless I mix it in the Tarte palette, I don't have something spot on. So I actually kind of really like that color. That's going to be a really nice undertone color, really nice base color. So this is kind of going in the direction that I wanted the Wild Nothing from ColourPop to go, but the ColourPop formula for some reason in that palette was so like light that like nothing came up on my lids. It was like blah, you know. So this is already looking like what I thought that palette would look like. Only typically Huda's formula is pretty damn good, so I'm hoping that it's good. So the next color, it looks really similar to Luscious inside of the Tarte Juicy palette. So here's another one from the Tarte palette. If you guys can see, the Tarte palette does have a lot of really similar colors. I feel like I have that color, but it works really nice with this color family. So far, I really like this palette, guys. I think that this color story is really cute. For the next one, what I did was I jumped into Inspiring from the Tarte palette because it's going to be like a little bit like a peachy tone. At least that's what it looks like. I don't know if it's going to be as peach as this one, but I think it's going to be pretty close, I hope, because I honestly really love like these type of peachy tones when they're inside of these neutral palettes. It just helps you be able to add a pop. On today's look, I used a really nice peachy tone, and I think it really just makes the brown stand out. So the next one, I jumped into Dawn from the Tarte palette. I feel like I'm just jumping into the Tarte palette. Can't you notice a little thing here? So I just grabbed the color Dawn. I think it's going to be similar to this, if anything, just a tad bit more gold. So you can grab a little bit of this color, which is called Reflect, and just kind of like put it on top, and you are going to change this into a little bit more goldy, but it's going to look similar to that, and I like that color. So there is a color similar to the last color in this palette, which is this one here, but this one goes a little too chocolate. She looks like she included something a little bit of a cooler brown. So I went into the Smoky palette, the first color right here from the last row. Oh my God, I have to put this palette away before it dirties my table again. So it's this beautiful chocolate brown. So it's like a cool tone brown, and that's a really nice deep deep shade, which is great because it's going to give you some nice dimension. So you're going to be able to smoke out those outer edges. What I like too is there's this really deep metallic, and I feel like you can use these two together in order to create a real smoky lid. So you can use this all over the lid, and then just, you know, with your outer edge, you could smoke it out with a really deep, dark brown. You can go really vampy. I love this color story, guys. It is not anything out of this world, but in a small $29 palette, oh, this is speaking to me. The next one I want to jump into is the one called Toffee. So I will be honest with you guys, when I saw the Toffee one, this is not one that really excited me as much because there's a yellow in there and I really don't love yellows. Now, I do have a palette that reminds me of it that I love. And it does have a yellow in it, but there's just something about this yellow that's a little different. So either way, the Natasha Denona Gold palette, it has so many of the shades from the new Toffee palette. Like, I feel like this is very, very similar. So the other palette that I jumped into was also the Tarte palette. So if you guys can see, the Tarte Juicy palette does make some appearances here in this video. But for sure, guys, if you look at this palette right here, this has a very similar colorway to the new palette. So I do think that this one was the one that I really reached into the most, finding these colors. But let me show you guys what I found. First one, I jumped into the Tarte palette and I grabbed the color Wishful. So if you guys can see, this is a very light, almost creamy color. I've been seeing a lot of brands doing this lately, and it does look really nice to have a cream when you're working with darker colors to make the inner portion of your lid look open and more awake. So for the next one, Gold palette, one of my favorite colors, Arium, down here. It has a very similar tone to this one. Arium is almost like a brassy gold. It looks really close. Like, it's not identical, but it's pretty damn close. Like, are you going to tell the difference on the lids? I doubt it. So the next one I jumped right back into, Natasha Denona, and I jumped into the color Log. This is one of my favorite browns in the world. I use this brown like crazy. It's not just the color of the brown, because the color of the brown is just like perfect. It's not too warm. It actually has a little bit of coolness to it, which just makes it so easy to use, but it's also an amazing formula. So just besides the color, I just love Natasha's formula. So for the next one, Gold palette, I jumped into Alchemist. That's right here. This has a really similar idea as well. This one is the same kind of like bronzy tone, but it has a little bit more of like orange brown in it, and that kind of reminds me a lot of what's going on in the new Huda palette. Like, it really just looks almost identical. The next color, we just jump right back into my Natasha Denona, and I jumped into this color right here, which is called Dijon, which makes sense, Dijon mustard. It's like a mustardy yellow. I think that the Huda one is going to be more yellow than this one, but honestly, I don't really like yellow. So if it's not close to the Dijon color, which it looks like it's going to be a little bit lighter than it, I don't think I would really use it too often. I don't like yellows and browns together. Now, the reason I like the Natasha one, because it does have a little bit more brown in it than yellow. I think hers is going to have more yellow than brown, which makes it a little bit less appealing for me. So for the next one, what I did was I jumped into the Tarte palette and jumped into the color Reflect, which is right down here. This is actually a really pretty inner corner shade. It's a nice center of the lid shade. You know, it's just a really nice like champagne-y metallic. At least that's what it looks like. And yeah, I like that shade. That's very pretty. It also looks like it might have a little bit of peach to it from the swatch, so that's why I went with this color. So this one, I don't know. This one might actually be a satin, but just for the sake of the video and seeing the color story, I grabbed this matte right here called Grounded. Now, this is a really pretty brown as well. I think it's more of a lighter brown. I actually hope that this is a matte and not a satin, because as of right now, we need some more mattes, because we need like some depth in this palette, if you know what I mean. So I jumped right back into the Gold palette and jumped into this color called Kava up here. This is a beautiful, more of a champagne-y gold, and the one that's in the Natasha Denona palette is a lot more glittery. I think that the one inside of the new Huda palette is obviously going to probably have just a lot more impact, because it's going to be like a strong metallic. But for the sake of the video and seeing the color, it's going to look similar to that color. And the final color we also got from the Gold palette, and it's this color right next door called Aria. And that rounds out this palette. Okay, so this is what I'm thinking. Like, if it was between these two, for me personally, personally, this one makes more sense for me than this one. The problem with this one for me personally is I feel like there's not as many blending shades as I feel like in this side. This one has, you know, like the yellow, which is actually going to be yellower than this one. So it's gonna be light. And then really the blending shades are these three, and there's only one really, really rich one, and I'm not sure if this one's going to be a satin or if it's going to be an actual matte. So I don't feel like this one is going to be as easy to use as this one. So if it was me and I had to pick between the two brown palettes, I would go this route. So that's what I'm thinking right now, but let's keep going. I'll give you guys my final thoughts at the end of the video. So for the last one, so this one actually is pretty interesting. It's the eye look that I created today. So usually what I'll do is I'll try to like use some of these colors together to see if I like the way the looks come out. And the palette that I tried to mimic on my eyes today was the Caramel palette, because that one was pretty interesting to me. So I did use a few palettes, and one of them, I'm actually shocked how many colors that I got out of Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. I didn't think I was gonna get so many out of there. The ABH Soft Glam, I actually added in the Tarte Juicy palette for one color. I also used the Sunrise, and finally, the Smoky Obsession. So if you guys can see, this is the one that really took the cake with having to bring in a few different palettes. And I will tell you guys, this one is probably the most interesting color story to me. It looked a little bit more orange. It has something a little bit different to it. So I was pretty excited for this one. So if you guys have seen my channel before, you guys know I rearranged my Metropolis palette. So I'm gonna tell you guys the real names of these shadows because I do know exactly which ones they were, but if you try to go by this, I have it rearranged. The first shade I jumped into was this one right here called Helena. So this is a really cool looking metallic-y orange. Now I do think it's gonna be pretty close to this color because based off of the swatches, it does look like it's gonna have like a metallic, pretty strong orange undertone to it, which I think is really, really pretty. So for the next one, I actually stayed inside of Metropolis. I went to this color called Crest, which is another metallic-y, like orangey color, but this one is a little bit more pink. And I thought it looked like kind of similar, like it kind of really reminds me a lot of the colors. So those two to me are pretty close, pretty close. So this is where we had to go into the Sunrise because when you look at Metropolis, Metropolis didn't have like these kind of like pinky oranges. It had like more real oranges. So this one almost looks like a coral. And I remember inside of Sunrise, there's this color called Morgan that's more of like a coral. This is such a beautiful color. Like I honestly hope it's like Morgan because Morgan to me is my favorite color in Sunrise. It's what I used all over my lids today. That's such a cool color. So sorry, let me wipe off all the black shadow. I thought I cleaned this already. I really think this is starting off really good, right? Don't you guys think? I think it is. I think the next color is going to look closer to this one. So this is the color called Charmed from the Tarte palette. I thought it was going to look more like a different color, but I don't know. Now looking at it, I think it's going to be more like this color. It's going to be a little lighter than the color I thought. All right, so for the next color, I jumped into Metropolis again, and I jumped into the color called Blaze, which is this real cool bronzy metallic. I think this is going to be almost the same. It's going to be a really cool bronzy with a little bit of orange gold. I think that's really pretty, and those type of colors look just really awesome with like an orangey color story, so I think it has to be close to that. That's really pretty. So inside of the Smoky Obsessions, we're gonna grab right into this color again, the same exact color we used last time, trying not to move this palette. And I'm gonna grab this real rich metallic-y brown. I think it's gonna be similar to that color. I think she used that one probably twice in two palettes, but I do like that one a lot. That's a really nice color, and it makes sense in this color story. Okay, so the next color I really love too. I also used it on my eyes today. It's inside of the Sunrise palette. It's called Dayspring. So Dayspring is this really pretty, almost like, it has a little bit of peach in it, but it's like a metallic-y peachy orange. I really love this color as well. I'm really liking this palette if you guys have not noticed. Like this one to me is just probably the prettiest one. So this is where we go into Soft Glam. So I think that Orange Soda looks so similar. Like when I saw this color, I go, that looks so familiar, and I think it's Orange Soda. If you guys see, Orange Soda has almost like that same color, and this is such a beautiful color. I love using Orange Soda as a peekaboo shade, and I think with the oranges that they have in this palette and like these warm colors, I think it could be like phenomenal. The last color, I think it's gonna look similar to Sienna inside of the Soft Glam as well, because it has just a really similar tone. Like, honestly, Sienna is what I used on my outer edge today. It's one of my favorite colors in the Soft Glam as well. So yeah, this palette here, guys, also looks like it's really, really, really pretty. So guys, we have gone through it. I have swatched everything in my hands. We also have some random blacks going on, but I have everything swatched on my arms, okay? So now is the moment. Let me tell you guys what I think. I'm also gonna make up my mind right now, but guys, I really think that these three palettes are actually really pretty. However, of course, there is one that I like the most out of all three of them. I think that the most unique one and the most interesting one is the Caramel Obsessions. I think that this is absolutely stunning. I had to jump into a few of my different palettes. It wasn't like all the tones were mixed into one. I think it's really, really pretty. So I'm gonna make up my mind and say this one is coming home with me. Yes, I am picking up the Caramel. So when we talk about Toffee, Toffee has a pretty aspect to it, but the yellow kind of killed it for me. And also I don't think it had enough depth for me. So I'm definitely gonna be passing. I'm gonna make up my mind and say I'm passing on Toffee. I don't think I'm gonna get that much use out of it. I also don't think it's the most unique. And for the Toffee, honestly, the Natasha Denona Gold palette is very similar and it just gives you more. It gives you those colors that I'm missing. So I'd rather just have the gold palette. Like it satisfies my needs for the Toffee, and I don't really think I need the Toffee, but I do think it is the Tortoise. I love this one as well. I think this one's so pretty. I'm gonna make up my mind and say I'm picking this one up too, because I see myself having, I love these little minis because I think they're very convenient, and this is a very everyday light look palette. I would love to have this colorway in like a stronger, richer formula, and I think that this Huda palette will give me that. So yeah, guys, I'm excited. I think that these are beautiful. I honestly think all three are really nice. They have pretty colors in them. It just depends on if you have any of the palettes that I showed you guys and whether you think it is worth it to add to your collection or not. So anyways, I hope you guys really enjoyed my Make Up Your Mind this week. Let me know down below what you guys are thinking, if you're thinking of picking any of these up, and yeah, I'll talk with you guys later. Bye.